Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, where you will find interesting guests and discussions about cutting-edge topics to assist you on your journey. The Quantum Guide Show is ideally suited to the newly awakened and for those who feel isolated by their newfound beliefs. The mind, body, and spirit thrive when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change that we wish to see in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, and share this show with your friends. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today, my special guest is Mirakle King. Mirakle is the visioneer founder of the Camus University Institute. He is also a sacred sound medicine musician, breathlight.net director, self-care mastery counselor, Mu Stars jewelry designer, and New Earth Destiny documentary filmmaker. Mirakle has a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Design from UC Davis, is a certified Sampurna Hatha Yoga Master and ecstatic dance music DJ known as Mirakle King. Since the inception of his global ministry in 2003, he has led and co-facilitated life-affirming events with thousands of people all over America and the islands of Hawaii. He has led certification trainings, seminars, symposiums, ceremonies, and intensive retreats internationally in Canada, Costa Rica, Italy, Switzerland, New Zealand, Russia, Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, Bali, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. In 2018, the neuroscientists gave him the name Mirakle for the epigenetic spontaneous regeneration work he actualized by creating a new spine with the divine in 70 dark nights. All his links are in the description below. Welcome, Mirakle. Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show. How are you today?
Hey, aloha, Karen. Yeah, I'm really great. Excited to be here in this moment. I'm just noticing that there might be, just let me know if the noise is a little bit too much. We've had to kind of navigate the situation with the internet here. So just let me know and I can just like take a pause and move.
Okay, but I'll let you know for sure. So I'm wondering,
Okay, great.
first of all, did I leave anything out of your introduction? Is there anything else you want to let the viewers know about you and what you do?
I mean, I think that was a thorough introduction. That was a brief bio of the many things that I've experienced and um, been part of my initiation, rites of passage, as well as the gifts that I've given to humanity so far at this moment in time. I mean, obviously, if people want more in depth about specifics, they can go to my websites, they can go to my socials, as well as all the links that you just mentioned.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, they'll all be below. So I'm curious to know, were you always a spiritual person, or was there a defining moment in your life where you decided to turn yourself over to, I'm going to call it the alternative spiritual reality, as opposed to mainstream religious beliefs? How did that all happen for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that I definitely in my earlier years, um, I was I was introduced to more of a religious concept of spirituality, obviously more through both my mother and my father. My father was like a Japanese Shinto Buddhist, and my mother was actually Confucianism. But then when she actually came over from northern China, um, or actually from Taipei, Taiwan, to be specific, she decided to move more into um, I guess kind of just becoming one with the Joneses, the American way, and the Christian faith. She was integrating into sort of the American religious freedom, and so she decided to baptize us into the Roman Catholic religion. So I had like the Buddha on one hand and the Christ on the other. Uh, Personally, I started to really open up to, I would say, the greater signature of consciousness that has been making itself known to mankind for eons of time. But myself, I was a big daydreamer as a child, and maybe it was partly a way to escape, but it was definitely, um, I felt like I started to have very strong contact with between the ages of 5 and around 9 for like
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 years. I started having connection with um, extraterrestrials. And there isn't any specific like conversations that I can offer right now around my experience with them. But what I've said in other podcasts and interviews subsequently up to this point is that I just had contact. I knew that they were with me. I was given information at an early age
Mm-hmm.
around my my purpose and why I was here, and I knew that I was uh, being protected, and at the same time, I also was working out a lot of uh, volatility in the family lineage that I was born into. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was like kind of like my saving grace connection.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a time where I actually just turned off sort of those antenna feelers. And it was around 9 or 10 years old. And I decided that I was just gonna like, become human and do human stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that lasted for about 10 years until I had my initial shamanic first of 7 life death experiences, I would say. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. You said the first of how many life death experiences?
7.
7. Do you feel like
Mhm.
sharing what some of those are were like for you, or you don't have to get into detail. I'm not trying to get personal.
Sure. I mean, I've
It's just
I've
that
shared these on other podcasts, but I
these things are
Mhm.
profoundly life changing, and I believe open us up to other realities. At least that's how it worked for me. So but a lot of people have not had that, so they don't know. So that's why we want to tell them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I welcome all of your questions. I've just been recollecting of how many times I've spoken and what I've spoken to, and kind of just like choosing to sort of maneuver or bring the trajectory of the conversation towards um, maybe some pieces of some of those experiences or narratives of those storylines, because they are
Mm-hmm.
just stories. Everything is a story. Everything is a narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and everything is given meaning by our own personal connection to those experiences. And I know that the whole concept of life, death, near death, you know, is really powerful for people who are, moving through those, um, or at least like now it seems like more than ever before, these things are happening more ubiquitously just because we're going through a lot of implosion. And these
Mm-hmm.
are all part of this script on the collective level we all signed up for. So for me, these 7 experiences were just really deep pattern interrupts in the life that I had been living, and very obviously I couldn't continue in that way. And so they happened in the context of different timelines within my life. The first one was at 20, And my most recent one was obviously what I sent to you as Becoming Miracle from Devastation to Total Spontaneous Regeneration, my SRSH story, about how, uh, I regenerated my entire lumbar spine. So with the divine. And so that happened, let's see, that happened 6 years ago. So and in between those timelines, there were five other, not as drastic, but just as profound in their weight and their breadth of what they were for me in relationship to that particular moment that I needed to go through that experience. And
Mm-hmm.
some of them were not necessarily out of body experiences, because a lot of people associate the NDE, the near death experience, like, okay, you're gonna like go through this wormhole and you're gonna have this out of body experience, you're gonna meet all these beings, and it's like a DMT experience, it's like an ayahuasca trip, or it's like a deep meditation with a really powerful master that's outside of yourself that helps to induce an experience inside of yourself, like Kundalini or something like this. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's many different iterations of having a spiritual experience right now. And these are
Mm-hmm.
happening much more rapidly because we're going through, a very big shift of ages right now. And so I would say that um, I've had, like, for example, the first one at 20 was um, very much an experience that was self-induced by plant medicines, more specifically psilocybin.
Mm-hmm.
And that I had been up to that point, and then all of a sudden I got to experience psilocybin in what it's really here for, as like a rites of passage. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
propelled me into a very dark, sort of death-like experience, in the sense of then eventually seeing that the earth was going to destroy itself if humanity did not change. And because I was one cell of billions of human cells on the planet, that it was my responsibility to be able to go into the unknown. And at first, at 20 years old, um, I was extremely afraid. I was very scared of the unknown. I was very scared of surrendering to something beyond what I knew up to that point, when I sort of, like I said, at 9 or 10, I turned off my connection. And I spent 10 years sort of exploring, this kind of darker, um, recreational, uh, teenager lifestyle, and really tested the boundaries, in the area that I grew up in high school, or intermediate high school, these kinds of things. So when I was 20, this is where this first reel of the seven really kick-started my spiritual path. And it actually got very suicidal. It got, actually, for the first time, had, um, yeah, experienced really deep depression on not knowing how to move beyond this blank wall of the end. Like, this is the end. This is the end of not only my life, but this is the end of all of humanity's life. And there's no going back and stopping the end. This is just the absolute death and destruction and complete annihilation of everything that we've known as humanity on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was faced with that reality and was shown that while on this psilocybin rites of passage trip, that was not done out of a conscious perspective, it was done unconsciously, but it was like finally the last straw of the intelligence within psilocybin saying, hey, listen, you can't keep doing these things and expecting to have a good time without realizing these are actually used in very deep, uh, spiritual indigenous ceremonies with the indigenous for thousands and thousands and thousands of generations, right? To be able to give the rites of passage for, a young girl to become, the first stage of a woman, just like a young boy to become the first stage of what it means to be a man in the tribe. So that's kind of like what I induced in myself. And
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time that I really got to experience surrendering to a greater universal intelligence. You can call it God, you can call it spirit, whatever you like.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my reawakening after kind of shutting down for 10 years and then moving into this path of like, okay, I'm going to commit to, I don't know how I'm going to be able to serve this planet, but I know that the directive is I'm here to fulfill the greatest potential possible. I'm here to assist as best as I can, um, the the fullest potential of every human that I come across, and that I have a particular mission and blueprint, and now I need to discover what that is. And
Mm-hmm.
that was like my push onto the path. It was sort of like, here you go, like it's time, and you've been unconscious for this amount of time, and now you have to get onto this path, even though you have a lot of things to unlearn, and there's a lot of patterns that are not conscious, that are not conducive towards spiritual awakening, and let alone self-mastery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So would you say that those different dark times of in your life actually um helped you to get yourself onto the right path, to have the right kind of experiences and awakenings to help you to make the shift? Because it seems like most of us are asleep until we get woken up. And unfortunately, like for me, I had adversity. That's what woke me up. Health challenges, life, all kinds of life
Mm-hmm.
challenges. And the deeper, darker it got, it seemed to do me the most good in the long run. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's almost like I'm actually grateful for everything that I've ever been through in my life that's helped me to be on the path that I'm on now, which is the one that I think I'm meant to be on. And also, we have so much programming, not just our generation, but generation after generation of programming that to break out of that, it seems to take a bit of a shock. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, Absolutely, definitely. I would say that, well, first off, I'm so grateful for all the times that I had to come against this concept of death's doorstep or death's door,
Mm-hmm.
or enter into the house of death, which I also now know that there really isn't a thing called death. Um, I mean, I know that's easy to say that once you've kind of been to the other side. Um, but death really just represents this unknown. And I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
scariest thing. But really, on one level, it's just like a shedding of clothing that you do every night to go into your bed to get horizontal, to go into the night dream, right? To prepare
Mm-hmm.
yourself to wake up in the daydream, which we're in right now. And we go through this, we go through this somatic physical process of engaging with the five sensory world, with the way that we see, the way that we feel, the way we touch, the way that we sense, the way that we hear, the way that we, smell, all the different senses that make up this world that's actually really a temporal illusion. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
wrinkle in time. And so, you know, we we um, we move through thinking that everything that we are um, connecting with or interacting or communicating with is solid and that it's going to last forever. But that's not true because life is completely impermanent, and we're bound to live as well as have a breath of life for however many years that is, 1 to 100, or even beyond, if you're able to make it past the centennial age. And then you have this concept of death. But really what it is just it's a cycle. And we have this amount of time to go through these awakenings. And yes, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depends on how you look at it, most humans, even myself, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is we have to go through some kind of drama or trauma, or some kind of where our ego, our personal, our how we've created our personal reality with our personality, this ego substructure, uh, when it's not in alignment, then we create this, very strong interruption that is attracted to us because we're not actually on alignment. We're not actually on the path that we originally signed up for before we chose to come into incarnation. And so that
Mm-hmm.
can be very devastating. Like I said, it can be traumatic, it can be dramatic, it can be breakup, breakdown, break free. And ultimately, breaking free is what we're here to be and do. We're here to break free of, like you said, those patterns. And obviously a really big part of that is our gene pool, our bloodline, who we signed up to come through the storyline and the narratives of what our father brought to the table and his father and father, 7 generations back. And I would even say all the way back, I used to say, well, I used to, I still say in my trainings and how I would, present material is that we go all the way back to when you follow your father's gene, no matter if your father was the perfect father and amazing biologically or a complete clusterfuck and just an abusive person and completely, dysfunctional, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna, if you just at least acknowledge that and find some semblance of goodness, primordial heart goodness, somewhere down the line, you're gonna get eventually back to Divine Father. You're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
get there,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to go all the way back, and just like on the mother's side, if you had like the perfect mother who is caring and unconditional loving and supportive and nourishing and nurturing, or you had the one that was completely bipolar and just constantly projecting onto you or treating you um, like, the little devil that she never wanted, and abandoning you, or all the different storylines of the worst possible case of a mother that just never showed up for love, right? You can still find some semblance of goodness in their primordial heart, and follow that compassionate line all the way back to the original Divine Mother, because you're going to
Mm-hmm.
get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's both the curse and the gift of,
Mm-hmm.
I think, every single human who is incarnated as a soul, is that we've, all the billions of us in whatever culture, creed, religion, we've signed up to actually choose to do that ancestral generational work, because it's actually in our gene pool, it's
Yep.
actually in our blood genes, it's in our DNA, that is the most thickest, it's blood is thicker than water, thicker than wine. It's the most powerful thing that keeps us into grounding these more expanded, if you want to call them codes or frequencies or vibrations, or sort of when people first get awakened, they have a kundalini, they have a religious spiritual experience, they have an ayahuasca experience, and they think they've like received everything in life and they've gotten the connection to God. But actually, that's just the introduction.
The
It's
introduction.
barely, it's barely the little, half step in the dance that you have to start dancing with the divine. And believe me, it's a long dance, and it can last for lifetimes, and it's beautiful, exquisite, and it's absolutely extremely challenging to any constructs or patterns or programs that you have chosen as like, this is who I am forever, you know, or even for like, relationships or work related projects or career or how you make money or how you survive, or, all those things are all part of these constructs that we've, and, granted, a lot of those have been predetermined by what we've received from the work that was not done in most cases by our father's line and our mother's line. And then when they came
Mm-hmm.
together, everything that happened for that first 9 months and those 3 trimesters, the prelimbic imprinting actually starts to program us and program, our solidifying our, our rack of DNA, and how we either are able to deal with those genetic, uh, anomalies, or depending on our soul and depending on our karma dharma, depending on our contracts, every single individual is different. Every human cell is different, right?
Oh,
But and
absolutely.
some are able to move out of that generational contracts and causation and curses, so to speak,
And
very
some aren't.
swiftly, and some are not,
Yeah.
exactly, and can plague them all the way throughout life in many different relationships, and that mirror that that core relationship, core wounding relationship that your parents um, basically gave to you. I mean, they unconditionally
It's our
gave
gift.
us,
It's our gift.
yeah, they unconditionally gave us their absolute shit and challenges,
Yeah.
just like they also gave us their blessings, and they gave us um, their love as best as they could, and their
Yeah.
nourishment and their guidance. Um, but I would say like a big part of personally speaking, my work on a personal level was really to find and discover the connection through the divine father's got my back and the divine mother's got my
Other.
belly. And if
Yes.
yeah, and so for me it's like it's being able to because I actually grew up and I chose parents that were dysfunctional. I chose to be in a very you know like I said earlier, it was a volatile atmosphere as a child, and it wasn't like this cookie cutter perfect American dream um, you know, relationship.
Mm-hmm.
At times it
Mm-hmm.
was the absolute American nightmare. And but I've been able to rescript the challenges that I experienced, and as well as my brothers and sisters, because I had a large family, and what we all experience in this challenging atmosphere, mainly coming from the patrilineal aspects of our line through through the father line, and that was the abusive frequency, that was the abuse that happened generations down the line that just got passed down. And no one could break the curse, no one could break the gene pool, no one could break the way the gene was expressing itself,
Mm-hmm.
and
Until you.
so until me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very heavy, because if you think like I don't
The
have
big
children right now, but I've
responsibility. Sorry.
yeah, especially if you're thinking 7 generations ahead. And for me in community work, we've communicated with 1,000 generations ahead. And so if you're wanting to script a new gene pool in the generational line of where you see yourself going, is and where the children of your children of your children of your children of your children are going to be, which a lot of people don't think about, but the indigenous thought this way.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
the Hawaiians thought this way. The Native Americans thought this way. This was the path. Was like, how am I going to break these generational curses and break what I learned from these curses, and then made it my habit, my behavior, and my patterning, my programming, and
Mm-hmm.
change that so that when I have children, or if you do have children, then you definitely need to be doing this work. And if your children have children, then you need to be really thinking about them, and then the children that are not yet born that are coming next, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that is a huge responsibility in, the work that I've done with myself, and also what I taught for 15 years through my global ministry, and what the work that I still do, you know
It's
because
so
it's
sorry.
yeah, I was just going to say it's like a very, very elongated, expanded spider webbing lattice work. And that it's even if you think you've taken care of like one section, and you've done all this work, and you've done all this like trauma healing, you've done all this curse healing, it can be re-triggered by a whole nother aspect of the lattice, by another like new relationship that you think is like going to be different, or you know anyways, I'm just saying for an example, it's like this work is it's it's never ending. It's a constant inner evolutionary pattern to
Mm-hmm.
embrace this lattice work of everything that we are, everything that we really are, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone that we've been a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, but it's also the gifts that come out of this are pure gold.
Oh,
They're
incredible,
diamond, platinum,
incredible.
gold.
You
Yes.
you become, it's like the crucible, which where the gold is heated up until it's boiling and the impurities come to the top and you skim them off and you keep purifying it and purifying it. And it proves who we really are, regardless of the labels our society might give us. And I can't think of anything more amazing, this kind of work. I was very, very much afraid of death for a lot of my life. And then I have guides who, you can't see or hear, but I communicate with them. And one day my guide said to me, Karen, if you knew how many times you've lived and died, you'd be laughing at yourself right now. It's ridiculous to fear death.
Mhm.
And I went, wow,
Yeah.
that's great. And then I thought about it some more and I thought, well, if I'm going to come back again, I want to get as much of this shit dealt with right now, right here in this life, so that I can course correct and make whatever I go
Mhm.
on to. I don't know what it will be exactly at this point, but whatever I move on to, and it just gives you such a intense feeling of peace knowing that you're doing this work. And even though you walk down the street, maybe nobody else you see is doing this kind of work, it doesn't matter. It's just that it's really
Mhm.
important, and in your soul it's really, really important. I'm wondering if I can just pivot for a second and refer to my notes, because you did have a theme that you wanted to talk about today. You wanted to talk about mastering coherent interdependence, and also how the voidal time, or how voidal time translating radiant heart health and prosperous wellness is actualized through innerology and the miracle method for work. Now, I think what you're already talking about is tied into that, but I'm just wanting to give you a chance to shift over and to talk more about the theme that you had given me.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. I I would say that mastering coherent interdependence really came from just the fact that, we just had July 4th and this long weekend, and um I'm currently here in Ashland, Oregon, and
Ah,
I figured that we were just moving through this timeline of, this United States of America. And for me, it's the United States of Atlantis. It's like this is where, the heaviest karma collectively is being played out right now for the whole planet. And
mm-hmm,
the idea of mastering coherent interdependence was this concept of moving from independence, which is like this singular thing, which is really what this country has been based on, is, Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and these things that have all kind of come up for questioning in the last couple of years. And there's been a lot of challenges with these different movements, that I'm not going to go into, but basically they've just challenged the core of every one of the tenets of sort of
mm-hmm,
what this country has been uh, built and founded upon, since obviously 1776. So I really wanted to bring from that sort of like independent connection that we all want the right to freedom and liberation into sort of that next iteration, was how do we actually actualize interdependence and really present that coherently, not just to ourselves, but to all of our relations. And
mm-hmm,
so for me, interdependence is really connected to depending on the inner life.
mm-hmm,
So everyone right now is just expressing their absolute external freedom, and you can see that in the different movements that are happening,
mm-hmm.
whether it has to do with gender, whether it has to do with color, whether it has to do with religion, whether it has to do with, you know, economic or military, or, you know,
Or
banking and
the medical
me- the
industry and your choices
the
around that,
medical
on and
industry,
on and
as well as
on.
like
Yeah.
centralization and banking and money, as well as
Yes.
decentralization and cryptos. I mean, everything is completely coming up, in this, what they're coining the Great Reset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of From what I call the pandemic, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
demonic even, which is a whole nother layer to all these wordologies. I'm a real smith when it comes to wordsmithing. But basically, to get back to interdependence, it's like depending on the inner, because
Mm-hmm.
right now, more than ever before, we have to depend only on the inner. And as much as that there's like this huge um, outpouring of, this whole other thing, which is technology and artificial intelligence and,
Yes.
everything getting quicker and faster and more and more things and more money and faster. And I don't have to do this anymore because this machine can do it. And this concept of this more is relying on this technocratic, external, exogenous thing,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not saying is bad. I'm not going to judge it. But what I'm saying is this technology is so outer. And granted, yes, we have to do what we need to do and manage our energy on the outer and on the screens, right? Because we all have them in this smart world system that's being, ubiquitously proliferated everywhere, every single globe. And I travel a lot, so I know. Um, but more than ever before, like this country and the planet that a lot of obviously follows what happens with this country, even though that's changing as well too globally. This depending on the inner, and this comes up to this concept of versus outer technology, bringing that back into the innerology.
Yes.
So instead of the technology that has all the answers for you, right? Because people are prompting ChatGPT and Midjourney and all these iterations of this for-profit AI, right? You can just track who owns these for-profit AI because they're data resourcing what it is that you put into it. And so they are using your ideas and your energy, and seemingly it's becoming faster and more and better for you. But as I know, there's cause and effect. So there's always yin and there's yang. There's always negative and positive. There's always you know, uh, we live in a bipolar universe, right? So if you're going for more, faster, then there's going to be another energy that's unseen that's less, and negative, and not in the more positive. Everything is coming to me quicker. And
Mm-hmm.
so, regardless of whether this is my personal opinion, that you feel that this is going to be the answer for you to make more money and to survive better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thrive, actually. There is a causation because the universe is still enacting its will upon all the different systems that make up this amazing universe and the hundreds of billions of galaxies and all the known and unknown sentient beings and sentient intelligence that makes up all of what you call your guides or your counsel or your
Mm-hmm.
connection with. It's really a communication, right? We're just
Mm-hmm.
communicating. So we have to learn how to communicate and depend on the inner and bring that technology into the innerology. And the innerology is interdependent because you're depending on the inside, the endogenous aspects. With endogenous means that comes from within. So we're endogenously inducing, right, this transformation that's coming from within. And all the answers come from within. And when we can
Absolutely.
actually depend on that, which, if you have a hard time with the word God or you have a hard time with the word universe, I mean, you can call it just, the inner connection that you have with source, because that is the number one absolute best friend that we need to have
Mm-hmm.
instead of the outer technology, which you're seeing this in children around the world in every country and every cross borders. Their best friend is becoming this very thing that me and you are communicating on, this screen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Their best friend is becoming this TV, this portable TV. So
Mm-hmm.
the TV of tell lie vision, tell lies, the vision
Mm-hmm.
tell lies, right? For the most part, we thought we left that stuff in the 80s and 90s with the big giant TV set in the family room, and some people still have this for movies and Netflix, but now we get this everywhere we go. It's
Yeah.
in our pocket, it's in our purse, it's in our backpack, and sometimes we have three of them. So people are listening to the Tell-I Vision screen on the bubble screen hijack, not learning to manage their energy, realizing this is the servant and you are the master. They're making the screen the master and I am the servant of the screen. And with AI, it just compounds that, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're not looking from the innerology of like, how do we connect in to this intelligence that's within this incredibly radiant, healthy, beautiful, wellness filled to overflowing temple that we have for one life. We, like you were saying before, we have this one life to be able to take care of much as possible from the inside, from within,
Mm-hmm.
endogenously, so that we can master what it is that is clearly an illusion and temporal in the relative configuration of the way we interact with the five sensory world on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And when we make this temporal reality, this illusionary world, the thing that is mastering on the inner, then we're seeing how this explosion and implosion of many group patterns happening, many collective patterning happening, and this is part of this is part of the potential for the end of this particular game on this planet.
Many of us have now discovered that the world is not what we thought it was, and global events have left many feeling unsettled and even isolated. Karen Holton offers vital services that may be just what you need as she supports your journey into the weird and wonderful. Karen offers awakening support and ascension consultation to support individuals on their journey. For more details, check out her various vital services. Once you find your way through this process, there are many blessings on the other side. Visit Karen's website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, to get started today.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Mm-hmm.
so being able to look at this as the human game helps us to realize that if we can coherently master this concept of interdependence, right? Coherence is really just a cool word that's become a little bit more, it's being used more often than not, especially with influencers, because of this marriage of neuroscience and science, the leading edge of quantum fields and science with the mysticism trainings and the more, indigenous religions and sort of
Mm-hmm.
this new age experience. And so it's grounding it, and it really helps because I really enjoy and I love this word coherent because it really means to cohere. It means to actually co-regulate yourself so that you are in alignment with all of the energies that are both inside first, and then from the inside, it's then created as a magnetizing force that then brings forth what it is from the inside that you're creating outside back to reflect what it is on the inside that you've created.
Oh,
So you can create
absolutely.
destruction and you can create creation. It's up to
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
It's all up to every single human cell to do that work.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of one of the things that I know I'm kind of jumping around here
No, it's
with
all
what it
good. It's
is
all,
that
and
I
it
was
all
intending to
leads back
present.
to the same thing, so it's all good.
Yeah, so just to get back to then this intention of this word of, there's been in the last maybe 10 years, maybe longer than that, maybe 20 years, this real slow adherence. And obviously your show is called Quantum Guides, right? So this concept of the quantum, right? The quantum now, the quantum universe, which for me gives us this idea of when we want to go through these quantum leaps, right, in our lives, which we can when we move out of the Newtonian physics world, when we move out of
Yes.
the five sensory world, when we move out of this Darwin's theory of de-evolution instead of evolution, right, and move into being able to collapse time waves and this concept of time jumping, which for me, time jumping is very powerful. And I do that and have done that quite a bit, especially in the last, I would say, 25 years of my life. But I would say the next iteration of which I want to introduce today, which I know you were like, okay, what is that? And maybe many people on the call who watch this later, um, after it's been posted, they'll want to really understand that time jumping really worked previous to 2012, but now you're having these aspects where interruptions are happening when you jump because the universe is shifting so quickly into our omniverse. And more specifically, when I say time translation or time translating, it's because now we have to ground. Like when you think of this idea of jumping, like you're jumping and between like from one rock and you're jumping over a river, let's say, onto another rock.
Mm-hmm.
There is this area which is either the water or there's space, there's wind flowing through. That's all these different anomalies and portals and different streams of consciousness within that little jump that you're taking. I'm just talking about physically jumping like over a small creek or a river, but
Mm-hmm.
that is a great analogy of when you do time jumping. And that may have worked pre 2012, but now since post 2012 and even more so 2017 and these time signatures of then 2022, which we just passed last year, we are now very much in a time of having to translate those jumps. And if you think about all the little aspects, if you were to build a bridge instead of jumping over that creek, you actually had to figure out how to build a bridge over,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not about just you jumping. Because when you're jumping, I mean, yeah, maybe you could have someone on your back, right? And you're piggybacking them and you're going to jump over the river because maybe they hurt their ankle or something and you're going to give them a lift up and you need to get across the river, right? Maybe you could time jump or jump with one person on your back. But as far as where we're needing to go and the responsibility that we have, and what I spoke to earlier about the generational clearing, and then thinking about then, okay, I have a clean slate for my DNA, my gene pool to move to the next generation. And they're going to have a totally different experience than what I had to do because I had to do all that clearing for half my life or all my lives, right? So now we're getting to this point where there's an omniversal responsibility. I would even say an omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent responsibility, the ability to respond. That's what responsibility is are you going to respond? Do you have the ability to respond with what is being asked of you right now in this very moment? And what I'm saying is in the time translating, we have this responsibility to not jump anymore. And what I'm seeing in the sort of younger generation and sort of the screen generation, I would say, the ones that are, obviously the millennials and even, post millennials. I can't remember what they're calling them, but
No.
basically screens are like they're on the screen the whole time, like generally speaking. And so they are time jumping, but they're time jumping in the sense of, okay, well, I'm having this awakening and I want to get there really quick. And so how can I jump this? And most of us have had to walk in either we've had to walk down sort of, if I look at it as a bridge over a very, like, let's go out of the creek mode and go into like a very large river. You can't just jump the river. How are you going to get across the river, right? We're crossing this river of immense collective transformation. So a lot of us who have done the really deep work and continue to show up and do that work, we've actually had to like walk down the trail, get to the river, and actually like go through the river and like start to wade in, and then all of a sudden you're not touching the bottom and you got to start swimming. and you got to move through all the obstacles, and you got to get to the other side of the river, because that's where we all need to go. And everyone has their own journey across the river, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have their own traumas, their dramas, their obstacles, their obscurations, their relational wounding and core wounds and all these things, right? What I'm seeing now with the sort of AI younger generation is that they're jumping the river, and they're learning all these techniques, and but they're not really actually systematically on the innerology embodying them. And so what's happening is they're jumping the river, and there's even a bridge, and they're even jumping the bridge, so to speak. And they're
Mm-hmm.
getting to the other side, but there's no real genuine authenticity or integrity with the way that they've integrated all of that work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why when I wanted to introduce today through mastering coherent interdependence, is that the first step in that is to actually move into this understanding of time translating. Because right now we're in this context of how can we create this personal and collective inner evolutionary bridge across this deep chasm that's very scary, full of unknowns, it's full of everything that can be the end of humanity, right? Which we've named.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get across? So how we genuinely and radically authentic in an authentic way is to translate every one of those sequences that comes in what we would normally do when we jump. Because what's happening is every single translation allows us to truly and deeply open up these gateways that will then allow not just ourselves and maybe, like, I don't know, our friends or our core, but many others to actually walk across the chasm
Mm-hmm.
that is this unknown rushing river.
Mm-hmm.
And part of translating is this concept of having to take one language, for example, and then translate it into another language so that it can be read or spoken out loud, so that that other person can understand or understand what is being communicated. And with time right now, we're seeing all of these timelines collapsing. And in the quantum anomaly, as they're collapsing, right, including the ones that we're seeing in the five sensory temporal world, which is very drastic and dramatic, it is our universal, omniversal responsibility, like I said before, to start to translate those changes for what we, especially those of us who have been able to be on the other side and have time jumped, we have a
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to translate this new bridging and that of time. And so this new bridging of time is being translated so that there's more of these people who are awakening so quickly, but it's like everyone's when everything is sort of in the end, like it's called a Yuga age, and everything's imploding and exploding, and nothing is solid anymore, you know, nothing is stable, right? And you're jumping all the time. Well, it's then much easier for an individual to fall and to not actually move to where we all have to go as a group collective consciousness, unless those of us who take this responsibility and take this desire to master translating time, not just within ourselves, but for others that are also choosing to get to the other side of now. And so that's kind of what I really, in a nutshell, wanted to sort of talk about today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really, really interesting. I find I have another analogy is quite different than yours, but sort of similar And that is, I view myself as being, and maybe you too, as being a map maker, where we go and we explore regions of, I don't know, reality or inner reality, and then we tell other people, this is how we did it, this is what happened, this is when I jumped over the river, this is what I did, this is how it happened for me. And it helps other people to be less afraid. I think that one of the big problems is like you said, people are going to external experts. They're going to external information sources. They haven't learned to go inside or to trust that's inside. And then going back even further to what you said is that's where we find the mother and the father who never let us down, who love us unconditionally and completely. It's all there, but it's been hidden by so many distractions. But I find that, when I tell people about some of my experiences and tell them that they were very safe and very good experiences, and this is what happened, and this is how I was able to benefit from it. And I think that's why, people like yourself that have this strong message to people is so, so important. So for one thing, yeah, I do agree. I know even for me, there seems to be a hypnotic quality, especially about my phone, that if I go into my phone, into social media, it's almost like my brain or my soul gets sucked into the device. And I have to literally yank my consciousness back out to be here again. And it's really taught me a lesson. So I throw it into the corner for most of the day and just check it from time to time, because I know that I have the potential to get sucked right into that. But when I'm not relying on the screens and stuff, that's when I can get more in touch with nature and my internal sources of power and information. And it changes everything. And it's also, I think, a bit like stepping outside of the matrix. Like the matrix is the construct that we've all been given. Our parents were brainwashed into it. We were brainwashed until we recognize it and step out. Once we step out, it's just so lovely. It's so lovely and clear and calm and peaceful. And, I never want to go back. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I'm not. I work at it every day. But there's a lot to what you're saying. I can totally, totally agree with what you're saying. And based on my own experiences, I think you're right on the money. And I'm so happy that you're here to share this with everybody and to help other people understand that it can be different. So there's many different ways to cross the river. And even I think we have the ability to fly over if we just understood the true nature of being. And the other thing you said that I thought was really good too is about how, there's a lot of debate whether the earth is a globe or whether the earth is flat, but I say it's neither. It's like a holographic projection where we explore and we make mistakes and we learn to do things. I really think I'm here for soul evolution. But anyway, I don't want to take you off topic too much. We have about another 20 minutes if you like, but please do continue to share whatever you want with us. It's just really, I'm finding you very, very inspiring to listen to. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And I know some of the viewers will be watching this in video form, but quite a few, probably thousands, will be hearing this on audio platforms. And sometimes that's even better because then they can really listen to the message.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I would say that, what you were saying about the Earth being a holographic, that it's neither the flat Earth or a spherical Earth, that is a really interesting conversation. I'm not going to go super deep into that right now, but I just wanted to comment that my experience of it is that it's more of a spiral oval, and depending on what aspect you are, if you really have some level of lucid astral out-of-body experiences, you can really actually experience the earth in a totally different way. And I see it as more of like an oval that spirals, and depending on what angle you're perceiving the earth, it's slightly a little bit different. And so yeah, I yeah, I guess that'd probably be close to a holographic. I mean, everything that we have been told as what the Earth looks like, you know, is not necessarily completely true, you know, and um, and that's also with the moon and many of our other celestial bodies. So we've actually had and still have dimensionally, uh, you know, we have family, I'll just call them family, planetary family, solar planetary family, that still exists dimensionally on our local celestial bodies, you know, from
Mm-hmm.
Mars to Venus to Saturn to Neptune, you know, to all these other celestial bodies, as well as the moon. So I think what it is like when we start to really open up through this time translation gateway and we start to really build a bridge, okay? Just to actually give another sort of specific um, connection to this concept is that part of sort of like um, when you don't choose to build the bridge, it's sort of the same as like a ladder run, okay? And like maybe at the top is total illumination, maybe it's complete, you know, decrystallizing the negative aspects of your pineal gland and actually opening it so that your pineal gland does actually start transmitting as it is, as it's a crystal manifesting generator attunement fork. And once it's clear, you're able to actually travel. And that's one of the most important glands, if not the most important gland, um, you know, in the brain, right? And so a lot of people are experimenting from technology, having an awakening and moving, like I said before, into these different plant medicine experiences like ayahuasca. And I had 10 years of experimentation with some of these plant medicines. So I know I don't choose to do these anymore. I don't need to do them because I'm able to travel pretty much at will. And so once you start to time translate, because most people are jumping this sort of ladder. So it's like the first run, and then you jump 5 runs, and you want to have like this very peak spiritual experience, and you think that everything is open, you know, and you want to have a DMT psychonautic experience. And what I'm saying is that it's very important for us to translate every single word, meaning you have to take the steps up the ladder. You have to translate every step along the bridge because if you don't, you eventually come back and you have to
Mm-hmm.
start over. And you
Mm-hmm.
may start by jumping the run and getting to a certain place and saying, okay, I start here. I jumped or I flew here. And you think that you're going to keep going. And then all of a sudden you hit a wall. And the universe is like, nope, you skipped steps. Nope, you jumped the rungs on the ladder. And so what I'm saying is like when we want to master coherent interdependence, it's really crucial for us to be able to do this work of not jumping the ladder, so to speak, or not translating every aspect of the information that's coming to us that needs to be integrated and needs to be systematically translated within time for us so that we can actually move beyond time in a masterful way, in a
Mm-hmm.
coherent way, in an interdependent way. If we don't do that work, we're going to have much more problems than if we had just started without actually jumping at all.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
that's really what, just to give further clarification. And so part of that work is actually then merging and marrying oneself into your own interology and realizing that the supercomputer, even the AI, is like a really degenerate crutch form of what's possible when we actually master the interology and we move into what I call the miracle method. And part of the miracle method, and this is what I'm continuing to write about and continuing to put forth in my own inner work right now until it's time to come out. But the basis of it is really to work on the physical, the emotional, the sexual, the sensual, the mental, the psychological, the psychic, the astral, ethereal, and causal bodies And when we can collapse all of these bodies into one, then we're actually able to produce and generate miracles at will.
Mhm.
And I know for a lot of us in this timeline that we're seemingly on in 3D, that's hard to believe. But there are, because of how much is imploding and exploding right now, and how, like I was saying, all these, when you dissolve these timelines that are on the outer, that you're engaging on the five sensory world, whether it's information, whether it's packets of information, whether it's coming from the mainstream, lamestream media, which, obviously a lot of us on this call don't even listen to or don't even focus on, but maybe
No.
it's coming from Facebook or
Mhm.
Instagram or TikTok or
Mhm.
all these socials, right? Social apps. We have this instant ability to dissolve whatever programs, patterns that want us to get on their timeline. And once we dissolve those timelines, and they can be fundamentally whatever they are, whatever they conjure inside of us, right? We can, I'm not trying to say bypass the truth. What I'm
Mhm.
saying is to acknowledge one truth, but then discover what is the core truth within yourself. And that happens from within. That happens from the connection to your own frequency when your bodies are all in alignment and you're able to move in to this homeostasis, this balance with being completely in your own well-being with all the aspects of yourself. And
Mhm.
that happens when we're choosing to love ourselves, when we're choosing to acknowledge our own worth, when we're choosing to realize that we have a purpose, even though we may not know what that is right now, that it's okay to not have everything figured out, that it's okay to be in the unknown for an elongated period of time or waves of time, that in that stasis, in that voidal intelligence, as I was this voidal timeline translating, is an intelligence. It's alive. It's it. But if you can think about it as like you've had a neighbor for 70 years of your life, and maybe you've gone to the fence and said hi once. But now when things are really hitting the fan, there's no one else around except that neighbor. And I'm giving that kind of analogy of like that neighbor is the grand organized design. That's pure source. That's God, grand organized design. You said hi to God a couple times, just because he was just there or she was there. It was there, right? The
Mhm.
intelligence was there. But what I'm saying is now it's like we have to like break down the fence. We got to go over there and we got to like really hang out with God. That's
Mhm.
coming from within. We
Mhm.
have to trust that this grand organized design within ourselves, endogenously, is our number one best friend. That it understands this navigational intelligence through all of the dissolution that's happening right now. And that if we can build this trust, go over, have tea, make some meals together, get to know the God within, really get to know the God within, and sit and marinate and marry even this God within, because it is going to be the most important connection that we are going to need. Not want, not desire, but need in the times that are potentially going to arrive and actualize in this temporal five sensory world.
Mhm.
Because the five sensory world right now is doing everything it can. The illusion is doing everything it can. The Maya in the East is was the illusion, right? Maya means illusion. The illusion is doing everything, and everyone that makes profit off the illusion,
Mhm.
everyone that feeds off control of the illusion or within the illusion, everyone that is immersed as the illusion is the only thing that is real,
Mhm.
right? All of those everyone's, right, are doing everything they can to solidify for everyone else who isn't sold on the idea yet, right? AI included, that this is what you have to do for the rest of your time. And so that's social pressure, government pressure, peer pressure, media pressure, smartphone pressure, smart world pressure, great reset pressure, financial pressure, economic pressure. It's all pressure cooking right now. It's all, everyone's fighting over all the different pots on the pans and who's gonna get the burners to cook this new meal that's coming out for humanity. Okay. And so much of it is a McDonald's Happy Meal. It's like, we'll have it all figured out. It's going to be the best thing for you. And you're going to love it. You're going to want to eat it for the rest of your life.
Nope, not
right?
me.
And so, yeah. And so, exactly.
Not
Not
me.
me either. But you got to decide right now that there's a much more nourishing meal. And like you were saying, in nature, like I have this beautiful tree behind me, this grandfather tree. And obviously, like, I wasn't supposed to do this transmission inside at the office. It was like, no, I got to be here because this is the frequency that is the most nourishing meal possible. And I got God to the right of me, and God to the left of me, and God in front of me, and God behind me, and God above me and below me. This amazing, beautiful, organized, grand organized design, this great gratitude-filled, organized design is overflowing when we choose to be in nature and we choose to really do that really voidal time translating work. And we can best time translate, and what I've found and what I've shared and what I've taught in the past and up until this very moment is that when we can be in nature, when we can choose to really allow ourselves to get out of the analytical mind, which is the thing that attaches ourselves to communication through the screens and to the business on the screens and to the everything on the screens, right? And turn the screen off, leave it at home, go into nature and start to meditate coherently, meaning cohere, co-regulate all your emotions, all your thoughts, all your electricity, all your feelings, which are magnetic. We're electromagnetic beings, and move into this alignment, an attunement with source, and move it through our body and make that strong, sovereign pillar connection with source as like an antenna, a radio frequency transmitter, because that's what we are. We're literally acupuncture radio transmitter frequency devices. And we can either transmit one frequency that's being completely blasted at us all the time through the screens, or we can choose to merge dimensionally, multidimensionally into the pureness of the source of our pillar. And you and I know when you tune a tuning fork and you put it on the body, if you don't ring it correctly, then it feels a little bit off. So we have to do that tuning, and then we ring it. And once we ring it, then all of a sudden we're electromagnetizing what it is that we desire, the matrix that we choose to create. Because the tomfoolery of it all is that all of us are choosing to survive and get by in a matrix that was created by someone else, by these other pressure cooking forces that are fighting over who cooks the new Happy Meal in the kitchen right now. That's going to be the gift to humanity. And the fact is, when all that chaos is happening, this is the perfect time for us to go into mastering our coherent interdependence and moving ourselves into nature, or moving ourselves into a dark room, or moving ourselves into really understanding meditation and aligning through this meditative emptiness awareness. Because meditation, to meditate is to become, in Latin, familiar with oneself. That's all it means. It's not this hard thing. It's not this difficult thing. It's like, oh, you're a meditator. Oh, I do a little bit of yoga, but I don't know how to meditate. Well, actually, yoga and asana practices and pranayama were actually put into a system so that you could learn to become familiar with yourself easier.
Mm-hmm.
And so to meditate is to become one with yourself, to know thyself, to become unified with yourself, to depend only on the inner self. And that is the beginning of the stage of mastery. And it's like Zen mind, beginner's mind. We're always just beginning. I feel like I'm always just beginning because I'm learning from, family, friends, clients, students. They all teach me something about how well I'm meditating or I'm not, how well
Mm-hmm.
I'm becoming familiar with my inner world, because that inner world, like I said, once your tuning fork is tuned, then when you ring the fork, when you ring the bell, then it expands out, and then it attracts those that want to experience the same or similar tune. And that is what we're here to really embody, integrate, thrive in. Because when we can thrive collectively together and gather around that same way of communicating, same way of lensing this particular tune, which is a color, which is a geometry, which is a language in itself, we're actually choosing to co-create and co-actualize and coexist in a whole nother translation of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole new language that has never been translated yet because we're the ones translating it. So
Mm-hmm.
that is every single individual translating that language. And then all of a sudden we start meeting and we're like, oh, wow, that's where synchronicity, serendipity occur, right? We're actualizing and coexisting in this new matrix that's based on this coherent field of languaging. And it's a languaging that's been time translated into, oh, we're actually out of time now. We're not even in this concept of what we look at as the patriarchal father time, which
Mm-hmm.
has created all these pressure cookers and it's created all of this scrambling around and all this like super high and low beta mind states of
Mm-hmm.
trying to get ahead of the next kind of rat race that wants to be created for humanity. It's a new rat race that wants to be created because the old rat race is not working anymore, right? So
Yeah.
we need to funnel all the rats into this new rat race. It's going to be a new matrix. That's going to be a great reset, but it's not new. It's actually old, and it's just completely a trap. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a rat race. It's a rat trap. So we have to no longer be the rats, and instead, most of us are learning to, really activate those that hunt rats, you know, and bring out that passion and that love of life and that fire. So maybe independence is important for you right now because you've been codependent and you've been depending so much on the external world and so many you've been depending on your parents for the answers. You've been depending on the social media apps for the answers. You've been depending on AI to give you all the answers for everything that's being regurgitated throughout all the systems of the World Wide Web since it was first introduced in the 80s, or rather the 60s, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you're depending on that. But you're still depending on something outside of yourself. That's the
Mm-hmm.
key thing. The key note is you are depending on something outside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to take that epic omniversal responsibility and start interdepending on ourselves. And I think that's where we really start to bring out that archetype of the lion or the panther or the feline, right? And then from there, we can start to come from that interdependence, right? And move into interdependence, right? Which is co-creation, which is like, hey, we're here to co-create and co-actualize a new paradigm. And we're not here just to be on the screens to do it alone
Yeah.
and, have some semblance of, our work online to make our money, to pay our bills, to have a roof over our head, to deal with everything inflating and then potentially depressing and, all these great English words, right? It's like, no, we get to choose these frequencies and these words and these geometries as a new languaging to actually come together, merge and marry within ourselves so that we can be in this divine unionship with other souls that are choosing to co-create a new matrix that's based on these core values, core vision, core lifestyles, core health protocols that are about holistic wellness, living and
Mm-hmm.
embodying and integrating holistic wellness and coherently healing these timelines, collapsing the old ones and allowing them just to die and do their own thing.
Yeah.
And coming together. And I think that's really the gist of it. I think this amazing country was built on some of these tenets and foundations. It was a group of men with really, I believe, powerful women behind them that gave them these core tenets that have influenced this planet. And some of these tenets are still very, very valid
Mm-hmm.
and important. Um, and and also, there are obviously some things that we're missing, and so we have a responsibility, if you're still in a body, to be able to potentially co-create these new avenues and ways of, what are our values if we want to create a new paradigm, what is the vision if we want to create a new paradigm, what are the principles, and can we allow ourselves to self-govern and to be collectively autonomous and to self-organize on a collective level.
Oh, I'm
Can
sure.
we do that? Can we do this and be this on a non-violent level? Can we do this on a level that's still embracing that we still have traumas and we still have dramas and we still have, even if we're spiritual, so to speak. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
some of the most spiritual people are dealing with some of the most heaviest
Yeah.
traumas and dramas and collective core wounding right now, because once we've cleared our vessels, we naturally then have to engage with our family and then our friends and then our communities and our tribes and our towns and villages and our cities and our countries and the world, right? And now we're
And
having
everything. Yeah.
and now yeah now we're at world karma, and I would even say galactic karma.
Yeah.
And now, yeah, we're
You
moving
know,
very quickly into universal karma.
Miracle, I'm so sorry, but
Dharma.
we're running out of time, but I'd love to have you back for more of a discussion and to talk more about all of this. Before we end today, I'm wondering if you could just, for those that are listening on audio only, if you could just give a couple of where people could find you and or what you're up to or what you've got upcoming, or what would you like to close out with today?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen. It's been a pleasure to be here. Love to come on the show again. I know we just barely touched the surface of some of
Oh,
these concepts.
it's so much. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so, I've been on this kind of semi-elongated sabbatical, to be honest. And I'm just this summer opening up to another round of really working intimately one-on-one. I have done some private groups, but it's been very intimate. And like I said before, I really have intended with the miracle method and the curation of the work of what I just, fundamentally introduced here as some concepts, basic
Mm-hmm.
ones, to curate to everyone's individual path, because every single person is unique. And I've found that smaller groups and working actually more privately, I'm able to go deeper into the interology system, so to speak, and
Mm-hmm.
really help curate specific modules and um, protocols for um, people's embracement and endearment to the path of the miracle method.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's really worked for me in the last few years. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently back here from Bali for 2 or 3 months, and working with some clients. But I have, if people are interested in this work and they're really wanting to dive deep and they feel really, um, just a really aligned resonance at the heart with who I am and what I'm sharing, then I invite them to, contact me. I'm on the socials. I routinely go off Instagram and Facebook and deactivate my accounts, but they're back on now. So you can find me on the socials, and then you can obviously find me on my Greater Visionary Work communiversity.org and read about that, of what we're attempting to do and actualize for the collective. And as well as I'm team building for that project. And yeah, I also, one of the things I want to mention, I didn't speak about it a lot, was I curate people into dark rooms. And that's another project that we're working on, is light deprivation. It's obviously something I've had a lot of experience on, and I've curated many clients into, as well as myself. And it's probably the most quickest way endogenously to get where you need to go, which is right here now, and be fully here as a coherent master of interdependence. And yeah, and then there's also breathlight.net, which is the work I did for 15 years, teaching my type of breath work, and did thousands of sessions around 12 to 13 countries. And then there's Moostars, which is more of my activated art designs that I did as a jewelry line, that really helped to address the different electrosmog situations we're dealing with 5G, as well as helping people to really live at the soul star level. My jewelry isn't just they're activated pieces specifically for the bearer or the wearer to move into their blueprint, their mission, and their soul's purpose, and to realign with it if they haven't done already. So those are my 3 offerings, and I do have some other projects on the back burner, but that could be for another time or conversation to discuss those.
Wonderful. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful. So for the viewers and the listeners, all the links will be in the description below. So please do check them out, and go to Miracle's YouTube channel and watch some of the videos. And I've also put the link in to how he got his name, Miracle, from being able to rebuild his own spine. It reminds me of that Dr. Strange. I don't know if you've seen that superhero, yes. Dr. Strange, and he has to rebuild his own spine, but you're the real deal. So it was pretty exciting. So please, everybody, reach out to Miracle if you want more information. And I appreciate all of you so much. Without the viewers and the listeners, I wouldn't have a show. And I want to give much love and light to all of you. I hope you have the best week ever. And we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels. Like this video and share it with your friends. You can also find the Quantum Guide Show and my other podcast called Aliens and Astrology on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network. That's www.forbiddenknowledge.news. And while you're at it, check out my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, where you will find some amazing products and services and an abundance of free resources to help you with your journey. All of the links are in the description below. And in the meantime, until we see you next week, keep up the good work.
Puts all my inner strife to rest, for time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less, and the sages put me to their test. With heart and soul I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where